So earlier I tried to record this, but actually it failed. So I'm gonna have to do this again, and I don't remember. I don't know if I can remember every single things that I said. So forgive me for that. And I want to touch on the subject this time about, again, this is sprung from the Air India Flight 171 crash. Um, and I have covered this quite a bit in the previous um, episodes. As usual, I don't edit this, I just do it in one go, essentially, just like if I were doing a lecture or conversation with somebody else. And again, on the issue of safety, like I've covered in the previous episode, like uh, um, named what's your definition of safety, and whenever something like that happens, or a crash of some kind with a commercial airline, and people always come out, pilots, airlines, the government, manufacturers, even after hundreds of people just died, they always come up and say, well, I assure you it's safe. um, Even the news, they say that air travel is still the safest mode of transport. Um, and after this crash, I would say that, especially after this crash, I would emphasize that in my own my own opinion and my own belief system, that is a complete deception, because, as I mentioned previously, this kind of aviation, we have had 120 odd years experience. We have the knowledge and the technology to make flying 100% safe. Excuse me. And it, yes, we can make it 100% safe, just like a bird, landing on a tree branch, or able body walking on flat ground. You don't fall over. Birds don't fall over and crash, even on stormy days, on a moving, swinging trees in gales. That capability is there. So this whole idea of statistics of saying, excuse me, flying is still the safest mode of transport, um, that is a statement of substandard conduct, because, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, as far as I'm concerned, not maybe you, not maybe other people, in aviation, safe means 100% or more. If anything less than 100%, then it's a degree of risk, and not you can't say 90. You cannot say 90% or 80% or 99% safe in aviation. It's either 100% safe, or it has a degree of risk, and that risk will be like 1%, 2%, 10%, 50% risk. But if there is the risk and it's not 100% safe, then it is not safe. And so to say flying is still the safest mode of conduct is a deception, or ignorance, or a substandardizing of the aviation industry. And as they use statistics and say, oh, only 1 in a million, how many millions of hours will something like that happen. This again is multiple deceptions, because for one, airplanes don't just fly for 1 hour. So if your long flight is over 10 hours long, even if it's 1 in a million chance of crash, then now you're flying 10 hours. So suddenly your risk is now an order of magnitude higher. So now you're 1 in 100,000. And every time you fly, you're running out of luck. And again, it shouldn't be based on luck. That's the whole point, is that statistics in engineering, in aviation, is not used that way. And there's a difference between reality, physics, and statistics. And just because you prove things are statistically safe doesn't mean that it's physically or realistically safe, which I will come back and touch on this subject. So this whole statistics thing, I think is deception, is a fraud, and is a misunderstanding or ignorance. And after repeating so many times, people believe that's the way to go. It isn't. So, and I would like also to recap on all the previous episodes is that people are now focusing on why that crash, and they say it's the worst crash of India and all that sort of thing. I can in my opinion, it is the greatest fail in aviation history. Of all the counted billions of flight hours and over 120 years, this is the most miserable fail in aviation history, because it should not fail like that, with no external influence. The latest, most sophisticated engineering, despite the fact it has a lot of computers and things like that, the combination of manufacturing, maintenance, oversight, operation, pilot training, a combination of everything goes into it. If everything was aimed to meet 100% or above, this should never happen. There's not even a chance it should never happen, and this happened, which goes to show that a lot of those things, and almost in every single critical step that leading to this flight, were highly substandard. And I also have to say is that this 100% doesn't mean 100% when it rolls out of the door of the factory. Doesn't mean 100% when the pilot graduates and gets a certificate and passes the test. I again have to emphasize is that aviation is and aeronautical engineering is 100% minimum pass grade. But that 100% does not mean 100% when you roll out of the door or you just pass the test. That 100% has to be when you so to speak start the key and turn on the engine. So in order to do that, after you roll out of the door or the pilot coming out to the flight test, and after having been in the weather, after flight, things being subject to heat, vibration, cycles, stresses and pressurization, pilot having fatigue, having have to deal with traffic and traffic instructions that are new to them, having to deal with all kinds of things, and his personal life, arriving in the cockpit, and the assembly of all the things that you can go together to enable this flight. The final result has to be at least 100% in everything that is necessary for safety, which is everything. Because if it's not necessary for safety, it is not on the airplane, or at least the in-flight entertainment. Okay, it's not for the you can say it's not for the safety of the flight, but at the very least, nothing on the airplane should be on the airplane that compromises the safety of the flight or at the detriment of the flight. So you can appreciate that the engineering and the training have to be way above 100%. Sometimes maybe 110%, 100, depending on what it is. Maybe 110, 150, 200%. Maybe it's 500%. Maybe it's 1,000%. Maybe it's 1,000,000%. It can be. So that after it left the factory and through the operation, and by the time that your flight, any one flight, any passengers get on, and everything will be above 100%. And now you can understand how stringent that thing is, that aviation is. And a lot of and this is again to continue to fill in the gaps that other people did not fit in, did not fill in, and that's why I did the video. a lot of professional pilots also chipped in, but they are talking from the pilot's point of view, and they there is an engineering manufacturer point of view too, and that's what enables the pilot to have the button to push. So a lot of people don't understand is that manufacturing an airplane, it's not like any manufacturing any kind of product that you have a degree of quality, and there is a minimum requirement for certain things to fit the certain standard, like how much power you got in the engine, how strong things have to be, how many cycles things have to be able to withstand. This is not just something like a business suggestion. This is a requirement, and you got to pause a minute to understand what that means. This is a requirement, not just a requirement to put out a product that would somehow resemble what you advertise the product is going to be. This is actually a law, because a law requires your airplane to be able to have certain strengths, to be able to have certain stabilities. Even on the ground sitting there, a lot of people don't realize there is a whole thick, like a 5-inch thick book of legal requirement for the engineering and flying characteristics, and all kinds of things, vibrations, temperature control, pressurization, strength, thrust, handling qualities. And that's why that you can't just swap out, like in a car, swap out a stereo on a dashboard on an airplane. You can't, because you change a little box in the cockpit or somewhere. That could change the vibration characteristics of the whole airplane. That is why it takes millions and millions of cycles of simulation, window no test, and every component has to have hundreds, if not tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of different shapes and iterations of sizes and things to manage it. Because you change one little thing, the whole ship could change. That's why everything has to be certified. And from braking to how quickly your brakes heat up, how fast people can egress, how your airplane can may or may not have tendency to spin. Can you recover? Can you even spin in the first place? What is the maximum strength? How can it, if it encounters there's even a legal requirement that you have to be able to head on and run straight into a pretty good strength gust, and still the airplane would not break, and that's why airplanes don't break. So I think the listener should appreciate this is not just any product. They say, oh, this is better than that, and Apple is better than PC, or this brand is better. There's a degree of quality. No, the requirement has both the engineering goal, and there is also by extension or by connection, in fact, there is a legal requirement for that. Well, if you exceed that, that's fine. I mean, including things like if two engines flying a long haul across the ocean. Actually, it's a big thing. Some of your young listeners may not know is that two engine large airplanes is a new thing. Because if you go across the ocean, actually it's not actually legal for you to have only two engines across the ocean, because if one fails, your airplane is not big enough. There's no big enough engine to big enough airplane to carry enough fuel, and there's not reliable enough engines to be able to run on one engine to cross the ocean. So you have to have 3 or 4. So again, this is not just a technical requirement. It's a legal requirement. Everything. So if you want to exceed that, like you have, some of the manufacturers try 3 engines. There's a 4-engine airplane. But you know what? If you want to have 5, 6, 7, 8 engines, and some airplanes actually have 8, even 10 engines, you can exceed that standard. But by exceeding that, you also have to have each of the components also have to satisfy certain legal requirement. So it's a very complex thing. And basically, if you can think of it that an airplane like the Air India 171 crash, that takeoff, on takeoff it crashed, and both the engine fail. This is not legally allowed, and they have the knowledge and the technology to make sure that is impossible. I'm not saying next to the impossible or virtually. Sorry, I got technically cut out there. Although I said I wasn't going to edit. So I was saying is that it's legally. It's actually legally required that those the airplane should not fail like that. And I'm not saying that it's virtually impossible to I'm not saying the knowledge of the technology can make it virtually or next to impossible for a failure like that. I'm saying that you can actually make it impossible, literally impossible, for a failure like that, and yet it did. And so not only that there is a whole list of failure from the manufacturing to the operation, wherever it is, but somewhere or many places along the line that lead to this flight, from manufacturing, maintenance, training, design, whatever it is that the on that flight things were not 100% or above 100% to the point where things would be, this kind of thing is impossible to happen. Again, you can make it impossible to happen. And I stressed again that by extension is effectively legally it's a legal requirement that this cannot happen. Because the law requires, certification requires a certain amount of reliability in every single component, and certain amounts of strength and number of cycles you can take. So the law requires that this cannot happen. So it did. So not only that is a fail in the combination of manufacturing and maintenance and all that, but and piloting, which maybe not the piloting, but I'm saying that somewhere along the combination of these things, there is enough things that failed to make this happen. And so by extension, actually, it's only not just by engineering and operational incompetence. It is actually an illegal activity that has happened. So to recap, that they're saying that it's still statistically the safest mode of transport for commercial airline. Statistics that is less than 100%. Even if it's 100%, statistics is not a physical fact variation, the physical verification that something is safe. And if for aviation, my idea of safe is 100%. So by saying that it is still the safest mode of transport because it is some 90% or some numbers that is not 100% that convince people flying is safe, well then I'm afraid that in my opinion it is a lie and a deception, and also deception in the way that if you say how many hours, 1 in how many million hours, and you fly each flight you fly 10 hours, and then you have so many flights, well eventually you run out of luck. So aviation should not be a function of luck. It should be a function of disciplines and physical fabrication that makes a product and conduct operation where things are 100% and it is achievable. And so far is not achieved because people don't have this attitude, and because it's also a function of money. Secondly, is that a lot of people don't realize is that there is a very stringent standard for aeronautics and aviation, for manufacturing and operations and for training, and it is not just like any product where there is a degree of quality. It has the minimum quality, and it is a very complex thing. And that minimum requirement in the qualities that is quantifiable is not just the technical requirement that you set out to achieve certain things, but it is also a legal requirement that you have that there are certifications for hundreds, if not thousands, of aspects of each airplane that is technically has to be satisfied. So by extension, the quality has a quantifiable quality of a vast number of things for aircraft and their operation have a legal requirement, and by extension is that something that like the Air India 171 crash, where without external contributions that the airplane failed, the pilot airplane combination, that is pilot airplane manufacturing operation maintenance combination, that just all of the engines fail on takeoff, is by extension legally not allowed. So that is pretty much the basics that I wanted to cover in a long-winded way. There are other related topics that I mentioned I will cover later, but I like to stress is that I wish this whole crash thing would have a closure as soon as possible, even though